It is story time with low, low love. And then like this is like a note for me in advance. Make sure you like layer those, like the low, low love. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. It was November of 2012, Black Friday. I was 7 years old at the time, and my grandma had taken my siblings and I to the mall for Christmas shopping. As any little boy from that time, you most definitely had a love for video games, and so I ran straight to the GameStop which had an Auntie Anne's right across from it. Skylanders Giants had just come out a couple months ago, and I love Spyro's Adventure, so I grabbed a starter set for Skylanders Giants and got in line, which was so long it led outside of the store. But as my turn was approaching to reach the register, this one PS3 game caught my eye at the very last moment. It had Sonic on the cover and the word Ultimate. I was sold on these two words and quickly swapped my Skylanders set with this singular game that was a whole $80 cheaper than what Skylanders was going to cost me. I could see the face of relief from my grandmother when I told her I no longer wanted this expensive video game with toys and now I wanted a $20 pre-owned disc instead. My naiveness and inability to properly read the game had led me down an unexpected path for my love for video games. Then comes Christmas night, where I finally got to open the game and pop it in my PS3 Slim. As soon as the game loaded up, I was given all the Sega branding stuff and greeted with a huge list of names. For a second I was lost. What were all these names? Where the hell is Sonic? I almost cried and wanted to tell my grandma on Christmas night that I did not like my gift. Soon I did find Sonic through the immense list and all was well. What I didn't know was that these were old school Sega Genesis and Master Drive games. I thought all these games were brand new and just were released all together in this one disc. Like some heavenly force was like, yeah, let's do that and like let's be like the best thing ever. The day after, curiosity told me to look through all these other games that I had no clue of, and that's when I stumbled upon Streets of Rage. Streets of Rage, also known as Bare Knuckles in Japan, was first released in 1991 on the Sega Genesis. After the good ratings and sales from the first game, two more sequels were released throughout 1994, and then Streets of Rage 4 was later released in 2020. For those who have no idea what Streets of Rage is at all, it's a classic 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up game that paved the way for many other games to come in that genre. It's super well known for its sprite work, combat system, and best of all, its music, with the 90s club soundtrack developed and led by Yuzo Kushiro and Motohiro Kawashima. So, as a child, when I got my hands on these games and started loving them alongside my little brother, who would always be my player too, I would start to share my passion for the games with my friends in elementary school at the time, but no one would have any idea what the hell I was talking about. The most common assumption kids around me had about the series was it was a spin-off closely connected to Street Fighter games. I have no words for that. I mean, I get it, but still. I think about a year later, I started understanding that these games and the rest of the collection of the discs were old games that belonged to the Sega Genesis console. I started going deeper into the rabbit hole of retro games. To this day, I either try to collect some retro games or load up an emulator and play some games not many of my friends know of. I find it funny how when it came to my childhood and video games, I can say that 50% of it was PlayStation 3, and the other percent was like Nintendo Game Boy and Sega Genesis titles. I get a funny look from people at stores when I say that, oh, this game was my childhood, and an older person looks at me and says like, the hell you mean? How old are you, kid? Like, what the hell? I don't know, I find it funny. So today on the first episode of Lalo Loves, where I talk about something I like, I'm going to be sharing my opinion about these games. We'll break it down like this. Story. More of the introduction of the game because I don't want to dive into the story for those who want to experience it for themselves. Then sprites/graphics. Then gameplay, then combat, and lastly, the soundtrack. Then at the end, I will give my super unbiased ranking of these games from best to worst. I just want to mention this too, I don't have the original disc that I used to play on anymore, so the gameplay you will see will be a mix of my recordings from the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis Classics, as well as walkthroughs on YouTube with credits to them as well. Streets of Rage 1, released in 1991, the original Streets of Rage for the Sega Genesis Master Drive. This city was once a happy, peaceful place until one day a powerful secret criminal organization took over. This vicious syndicate soon had control of the government and even the police force. The city had become a center of violence and crime where no one was safe. Amid this turmoil, a group of determined young police officers has sworn to clean up the city. Among them are Adam Hunter, Axel Stone, and Blaze Fielding. They are willing to risk anything, even their lives, on the Streets of Rage. So yeah, that's pretty much the story, and those 3 names brought up are the 3 playable characters in this game: Axel, Adam, and Blaze. They play pretty much the same, just with different sprite animations and different stats. The character sprites look fantastic for a game this old. Looking at the character select screen, even just with 3 characters, it's still so cool to see these cops you'll be brawling out as. The city background at the intro and the menu of the game looks amazing. Some of the best designs I've seen of a city in these older 16-bit games. And once you load up into the first stage, the colors are so warm and vivid to your eyes. I especially love all the neon lighting in the first stage. With some obstacles you can break and receive points, weapons, or food. Gameplay wise, it's simple but fun. You get 3 buttons: attack, jump, and your special move, which is just a card that launches a rocket towards you and destroys enemies around you. You can also grab enemies and either jump over them or throw them. You walk through each stage fighting more and more opponents. With their introductions to newer enemies you'll start to see more of. 2 players can run through Streets of Rage together and take down the secret criminal organization led by Mr. X. You go through a stage fighting enemies, reach the end, and fight the boss. Then proceed to the next stage with 8 stages in total. As you play, you rack up points and see how many points you build up through your run. One aspect of this game that I love and hate is due to the game coming from older hardware. There was plenty of limitations of how much they can put in a cartridge. The game can be beat in around 50 minutes, but to make sure the player plays as much as possible, this game and others at the time had an increased difficulty, making you must try and try before you beat the game. There was also the setting to decrease or increase the difficulty, but if you a real one, you go and play it in normal mode. The way the combat system works is you do 3 punches, and by the last punch it knocks back the enemy. But the strat to this is carefully doing 2 punches, waiting for a millisecond, then going back to 2 punches over and over until the opponent is weak enough to where you can choose to end it off with your special card rocket move or keep punching them. This works most of the time except for some of the boss fights, and it's just satisfying to see how many punches you can get in. I absolutely love the soundtrack for the first game. Just listen to some of these bangers. Streets of Rage 2. After the success from the first Streets of Rage, Sega decided to release a sequel in 1992, and let me tell you, the sequel completely blew up more than its predecessor, with improved designs and graphics, addition to the combat, and best of all, having the best soundtrack I have ever heard. 1 year after the battle, the city that had been plagued with crime and violence was safe and peaceful. However, evil once again cast its shadow over the city. Mr. X, the syndicate boss, believed destroyed by the 3 young vigilantes, has come back to life, stronger than ever. Thirsty for revenge, he kidnaps Adam in an attempt to lure Axel and Blaze into a trap. Axel and Blaze set out to help their faithful companion, joined by Axel's friend Max, a wrestler, and Adam's kid brother, Skate. They're determined to save Adam and put Mr. X out of action. 4 young friends, rage burning inside them, make a stand for friendship and peace. Spoilers? Mr. X was the main villain from the first game and is back again, and this time he's kidnapped the previous playable character, Adam. And now the roster welcomes 2 new additions: Max, who's your typical huge guy who's slow but deals massive damage, and Skate, who's more of a quick and fun character to play, who is also Adam's little brother. I don't know what kind of stuff the team was smoking on when designing sprites and assets for this game, but they made an amazing job at upgrading the quality of the characters and its world. Seeing everyone with their updated designs in this more vibrant and colorful stages is exactly what the sequel needed to let players know that this was Streets of Rage's golden boy. The gameplay is the same as the first. Go through this map as a 2D beat 'em up, facing different and familiar enemies throughout the stages, utilizing weapons and building up your score. Then at the end of the stage you fight a boss, then progress to the next stage, with there being a total of 8 stages like the original game. And hey, in this game you get to fight an alien king looking thingy. Why? I don't know actually. I have no idea after playing this game on why and how there's an alien. I don't know. It really broke the immersion of it being like a, you know, like a neighborhood or I don't know what to say. There's an alien, okay? And you fight the alien, alright? The bosses are a step up from the original game, whereas each boss actually feels more unique to each other and require a different approach and strategy when it comes to defeating them. So it's even more fun. Or it could also be more annoying. Depends on how you look at it. As for the combat kept their ability to jump and do your regular attack, with the addition that now you can input a combination to be able to do a special move, just like forward, and then the attack button. Then, replacing what was once the button to call for the cop car to shoot a missile from the first game, you get a button to perform special attacks that you can perform as many times as long as you have the health for it. For the special attacks now require a cost of your health. The combat feels more dynamic with the characters having more of a difference in how they work. There is this one thing in the first game where some of the earlier enemies you come across which is able to straight up hit you first and piece you up before you can land a hit, which did make the game feel more real to like fighting someone knowing you can't land the first punch always. But the first game made it feel so inevitable that you were just gonna get hit no matter what. So yeah, in the sequel they did remove that feature. I hated it, but I also loved it because it was funny. But I would be mad if I was like low on health and I was like doing great, like surviving, but then all of a sudden one of them comes at me and then I have to take the hit, you know. Alongside keeping the ability to play with another player, the sequel presented a new game mode where you could fight against one another. As much as I did like playing this game to kick my little brother's ass when we were younger, it's not the most well thought out fighting game, to call it a fighting game actually, since it basically takes the aspect that friendly fire was in the main game and just made it so you were free to do it outside the campaign and there wasn't much technique to it like actual fighting games. I cut slack for it for the fact that it's just more for fun and not an actual like PvP fighting game since Streets of Rage wasn't about that, but I would love to see some of the Streets of Rage gang appear in a modern day fighting game. I would be willing to drop money on another fighting game and its DLC as well. Mortal Kombat 1 really got my ass with their combat pack. Like I'm just saying, like I paid for Omni-Man, Peacemaker, and Homelander without like a second thought once I got the game. I'm just saying, like, you know, you can take my money if you had like Axel and like Street Fighter. I'm just saying. Streets of Rage 2 by far has my favorite soundtrack. Yuzo Koshiro was really at peak performance when making the soundtrack for this one, with house electric music being the main style of production for these tracks. Streets of Rage 3, released in 1994 as the final installment of the original trilogy. Axel, I have learned from a new friend, Dr. Zan, that the Syndicate is back with a clever new plan to take control of the city by replacing top-ranking officials with identical robots under the control of Mr. X. Our old boss, the chief of police, has disappeared and everybody in the city is preoccupied with the recent state of bomb explosions. I fear that the Syndicate's evil plan is already underway. Adam is too busy to help, but his brother Skate is joining Dr. Zan and me to try and get behind the bombing campaign and expose the real danger to the city. We need your help, Axel. Please come. Your partner, Blaze. This is the game I've had the least interaction with, and when I went to go back to play it for this video, I now remember why this is one that I touched the least. In this game, we still don't get our boy Adam back, but instead we have Dr. Zan, Axel, Blaze, and Skate. This game also allowed you to unlock two characters which originally were different characters, but one was removed in the American version of the game for being offensive to the LGBTQ community, and the other one is is Kangaroo. His name's Roo, because he's a kangaroo. Yeah. The sprites and artwork for this game look great aside from the color change for some of the characters. Not much of an improvement for the art, but that doesn't mean it's not good. It's just not anything like groundbreaking compared to the second one, you know? Like the previous two installments, you go through 8 stages battling it out with enemies, progressing, and then fighting a boss at the end of each stage. One cool thing that this game had added was character dialogue moments, which worked as cutscenes as well as played progress to the story for the player to understand. As much as I don't like this game, and so does a good chunk of the community as well, this game was the most innovative for gameplay. There was a bar that would charge up to let you unleash your special attacks instead of sacrificing some of your HP for an attack. For the movement, your character was now able to run and roll, which made movement faster. One addition I did not like was when they gave us 2 attack buttons, one for punching and the other for kicking. It's almost as if they were trying to ease more in the idea of making it more like an actual fighting game aside from having their PvP mode. According to the community, the best way to play Streets of Rage 3 is to play the Japanese version, since the Japanese version, Bare Knuckles 3, is the one with the original color schemes for characters, the inclusion of the removed character, it wasn't censored as the US version was, and more. I didn't want to check out the Japanese version solely for the purpose that I want to be discussing about what I grew up with and what I played originally. So yeah, basically why. The music for this game was okay. I'm not saying quality wise it was bad out of the 3 games. Streets of Rage 4 was released in 2020 and was developed by Dotemu, Lizard Cube, and Guard Crush Games, and was a way to bring the Streets of Rage series back into the spotlight for old and new fans. 10 years ago have passed since the fall of Mr. X and his syndicate. The city has been in peace until now. A new crime empire has arisen, corrupting everything good in the city. It is rumored to be led by Mr. X's own children, the Y twins. Former detectives Axel Stone and Blaze Fielding join forces with their old friend's daughter, Sherry Hunter, along with Floyd Araya, an apprentice of the brilliant Dr. Zan. Together, these 4 vigilantes stand against the Y Syndicate on the Streets of Rage. So, yeah. In this game, instead of going after Mr. X again, we're going up against his 2 children, the Y twins, which I think is a fun villain idea. We have returning characters from previous games and new ones, which I will not mention at all. Maybe not. Maybe. I don't know. The graphics of this game are the most dope ones I've seen from that year. Their comic style art looks so clean, and with Axel having a beard, dude, oh my god, he looks so sick. The stages look amazing. This is what Streets of Rage would have looked like if they had the technology for it way back. There are new stages and from previous games as well. The gameplay is the same as the previous games. They made sure not to mess with the game's whole picture being a side-scrolling beat-em-up, but this one there's 12 levels instead of 8, although some levels feel shorter. They then made sure to make the whole point system more rewarding with grading for your performances at the end of stages. And your ranking or your grade for each stage depends on a lot of multiples, so like how many stars you used, how much health you had, and other things. This is the part where I have just completely no script because I was like, there's going to be a lot that I want to talk about when it comes to Streets of Rage 4 because I've played so much. And I just want to say this is one of my favorite games that I still revisit from time to time. Like whenever I'm bored or if I know I just want to have a fun time, I just play Streets of Rage. The story is great. They have cutscenes, so they did the same thing as they had in Streets of Rage 3, but made it better in the cutscenes. You know, like if you're reading some kind of like motion comic, which is super fun, and just looking at this art style is always a fun time. Like I just love gazing at the characters' designs and like the stages and everything, dude. I love the design for this game. It's so cool. They added more sophistication to the fighting, not as in giving you more buttons. They have the fighting button, you know, your regular attack, special attack. They brought back the health thing where it takes away some of your health, but you can regain the health if you attack people before someone hits you, which I think is a really great like reward for it. And so with combos, now you can just keep going. Like you can bounce characters off walls, off trash cans, off a bunch of items on the ground, and you can just keep going. And the longer you have a combo for, the more rewarding it feels and the more points you get at the end of the game. I do think it's cool that you can unlock characters not only from the story mode, so you have more variety, but you also can unlock characters from the previous games, even the characters that you were supposed to unlock in those other games, like the kangaroo guy. Kangaroo's back. I'm not gonna spoil anymore. Maybe, I promise. But it's so fun collecting all these characters and seeing them just come to life in this game, and they even keep their little pixel style. The soundtrack is amazing. They not only kept the original ones, but they also remixed a couple of them, and you can choose which ones you want. You can choose if you want to keep it retro, if you want to listen to these remixes. They're both great, and I love that. I love how they knew that they had to make sure that that was like a key thing in this game. I think another thing that this game does really good is because, you know, now modern technology, you know, it's almost endless to how much we can store in one game, you know, and it's just, you know, it's limitless. So with this game, there's so much more extras. So not only is there the campaign, but there's also a quick play, so you can select whatever stage you want to play. You can set a difficulty. You can do an arcade run like a classic game, or you can do a regular, like you finish a level and you save your progress there and you can get back to it any other time. You also have boss rush, where you just end up fighting a bunch of bosses because a bunch of these bosses are just so fun to play against and they're all super different. So it's really a fun time. My favorite game mode in this is the survive mode. So if I don't want to play the campaign over and over again, I'll go to survive mode, which is basically you just surviving waves of enemies with new items or new power-ups. And the more you play with a certain character, the more moves you unlock for them that you can then apply when you play the story again. So you can change up your fighting style, and I think that is awesome. I think that really changes things up and gives you more time to play the game and just like not want to drop it. Another fun thing, which doesn't really apply much, but I think is pretty cool, is that you can change the color scheme of your characters. Why do you want to do that? I don't know. If you want Shiva to wear white robes, go ahead. It looks way cooler in my opinion. But even minute details like that shows you that these developers cared about this game and wanted to make sure you had as much stuff as you can mess around with in this game to make sure you knew that you were being taken care of for being a Streets of Rage fan or becoming a new Streets of Rage fan. They did keep the player versus player mode, which I mean, it's cool, but I don't really care because I just don't find the need to want to fight people in that. But when you play the normal campaign or when you play arcade, you are able to play up to 4 people now. So now 4 people can fight alongside you and defeat the Y twins, which I think is great. Just having more people to the party, it's just always a fun time. And yeah, as for the music, again, it's amazing, the remixes, and not only that, but they also keep the original soundtracks for some of them. I love it. That's a great detail. Now, to rank these games, it's gonna be quick. I'm not gonna give this whole explanation. I'm just gonna straight up say which ones I like the best and which is the one that I like the worst. On the top, it's Streets of Rage 4. I love it. I absolutely adore it. It's everything that I wanted as a Streets of Rage fan. I'm so thankful for this game. So it's gotta be on my, it's gotta be as number one. Number 2 is Streets of Rage 2, because not only did it have one of the best soundtracks, but it also had the best fighting system compared to the first one, and it wasn't too overly complicated as like the third one. So, I mean, yeah, that's number 2. Streets of Rage 2 is number 2. Oh wow, who would have thought? And then for third place, Streets of Rage 1, you know, it was the original founder. It's good, you know, but Streets of Rage 2 blows it out the water, and Streets of Rage 4, Streets of Rage 4 is Streets of Rage 4, and Streets of Rage 3 is my least favorite because the complicated fighting, the music. Like I said, the music, it's really not my taste, and I don't know, this game feels kind of ugh compared to the other ones. Yeah, literally this whole Streets of Rage 4 section was just off script. Like, I didn't write anything for it, as I said. I just straight up just wanted to say whatever because there's so much to talk about, and I was just so excited to speak it. And plus, I really don't care much for how I do these. I just talk. I like to yap. It's just yapping. But yeah, Streets of Rage series holds a special place in my heart. I love it so much. I have a really funny story that I originally wasn't gonna add in this, but I mean, it happened before I finished the script, so I was like, yeah, you know, why not? I was actually at a swap meet a couple of days ago, I guess from the time where I'm recording this, and I was at this one little shop where this guy was selling a bunch of nice retro consoles and games. And I love buying them, and I love looking at them. I just love admiring them. And I was looking to sell my PS2 to this guy. I don't own a PS2. I just bought it off the swap meet, and I knew I could flip it for a couple extra bucks. I just wanted to get this guy. Yeah, I know I'm not the most nicest person, but you know, a guy's gotta live. A guy's gotta make cash. And so I was talking to the guy, and I bumped into this one dude next to me, and I thought he was a worker, so I started talking with him, and he was really friendly. We were talking about Pokemon games and how like they're not that great. I might talk about that. Pokemon 5 was a disappointment. And he started talking to me about his favorite games as like a kid and all that, and what he grew up with. And then I told him, you know, one of my favorites is Streets of Rage for the Sega Genesis. I love the original trilogy, and I love the fourth one, the one with the 2020 one. He was like, oh dude, they're so cool. But then he started talking about Streets of Rage 4, and he's like, dude, I hate that game. It's stupid. Like, it's nothing like the original trilogy. And it's true. It's not supposed to be part of the original trilogy. It's like more of a kind of salute to the games. I don't see it as part of like the original trilogy, because the original trilogy is its own thing, like literally. And I was just like, oh yeah, man, like, nah, but the music. And he's like, nah, man, I just hate it all about it. Like, the music wasn't there. It just wasn't that great. It was just a cash grab. And I was like, oh, okay, dude, like, I really like that game. And he's like, oh, I guess. And then he started talking about some weird stuff like Pokemon Clover, which apparently is like a Pokemon ROM with like 4chan humor. And he started talking a lot about like anime censoring. He got really weird is what I was trying to say. And my friends walked away because it got really weird and they couldn't save me, and I had to save myself after like 10 minutes of hearing yap about crazy stuff. Yeah, not the best ending, but you know, I got to have a conversation. I just thought it was funny, and I just thought I should mention him. I mean, whatever. If this does well, then maybe I'll do more. If it doesn't do well, I'll just keep doing it because it just keeps me occupied, and I find it kind of fun, and you know, it improves my my editing skills, audio and visual wise. But if you did like it, then just, I don't know, leave a like, say something, subscribe. If you see the music stuff, ignore that. Ignore that stuff. It was one of my other hobbies. But I mean, yeah, if you would like to stick around and see more of this, just let me know. Okay, that's pretty much it. Thanks.